One of the most spectacular sets of jewelry in the British Royal Collection is that known as the Cambridge and Delhi Emerald and Diamond Parure. This is a spectacular set of jewelry that will endure, no doubt, for decades as one of the most spectacular sets of jewelry in the world, and it is a testament to two royal jewelry lovers from two very different royal families. The word parure is a French term, and it denotes a set of jewelry that includes at least 4 of the following items: a tiara, earrings, necklace, brooches, bracelets, and rings. Some tiaras or some parures include other things such as multiple necklaces, multiple tiaras, buttons, belt clasps, corsage holders, fan holders, hair clips, and while the Delhi and Cambridge parure doesn't have some of these other accessories, it's still spectacular nonetheless. The story begins in 1818 when Prince Augustus, Duke of Cambridge, younger son of George III, yes, that George III, marries Princess Augusta of Hesse-Kassel in Germany. A later visit to her family back in Germany, Duchess Augusta purchases some raffle tickets in honor of a charity, and her prize from that raffle is a small box containing 40 graduated cabochon emeralds. Cabochon in jewelry cut indicates a stone that has been rounded and polished rather than cut and faceted. Over the years, some of the stones were kept loose, but others were set in pieces of jewelry. Duchess Augusta's great-granddaughter, or granddaughter actually, was Mary, Queen of Great Britain, the wife of George V and the mother of George VI. She's portrayed by Claire Bloom in the movie The King's Speech. Queen Mary was a noted jewelry lover, but she did not inherit any of her grandmother's emeralds. Those were passed down to other members of the family, and Queen Mary had to wait to get her ultimate set of jewelry. In 1910, Queen Mary became Queen Consort of Great Britain when George V ascended the British throne. She immediately had several very spectacular once-in-a-lifetime occasions to plan for, and she needed jewelry and outfits to match. First would be her coronation in June of 1911, and the second, in December of 1911, would be something called a Durbar. At that time, the British kings were also emperors of India, and the nobles of India wished to host their emperor and empress at a glittering royal summit in December of 1911 in Delhi, India, where all the Rajas and princes of India would be present, and of course everybody, but most particularly the Queen, had to be in their absolute best jewelry for this remarkable occasion. Queen Mary at this point hit 3 jewelry jackpots. The first was that she finally inherited all 40 of her grandmother's emeralds. Her last of her surviving brothers died, and the emeralds passed into Queen Mary's possession. The next stroke of good luck was that she was given by the South African government all 9 of the major stones of the Cullinan diamond, along with several dozen stones that were cut from the Cullinan rough, almost 90 in all. Further, the ladies of India wished to honor their new empress by presenting her with a gift, and they chose several loose emeralds and diamonds of superb quality. So Mary had a lot of beautiful loose stones to work with. She crafted an exquisite large tiara of a very ornate lacy pattern, on which she planned to set 5 of the largest of the emeralds in a spike formation along the top of the tiara. There were 2 necklaces in the set. One was a choker necklace, and the other a longer collar design necklace that had 2 pendants that hung from the collar. One of them was one of the larger Cambridge emeralds, and the other was the marquise-shaped Cullinan 6 diamond. The centerpiece of this beautiful set of jewelry was a brooch called a stomacher. Stomachers were large brooches intended to fit over the tightly waisted or tightly corseted waist of a fancy ball gown of the time, hence the name stomacher. And often these brooches could be taken apart to fit into smaller brooches that could be worn over different parts of a dress. Queen Mary's stomacher featured in the middle the heart-shaped Cullinan 5 diamond, and hanging just below it an oblong portion of the Cullinan known as the Cullinan 8. And surrounding this were several of the emeralds and diamonds that made up for one spectacular brooch that could be broken up into several smaller brooches if she needed to. In addition to the tiara, the 2 necklaces, and this very large brooch, there was a couple of bracelets as well, but this was a very just gorgeous set of jewelry, and Queen Mary wore it or parts of it to her coronation, and also later on to the Delhi Durbar in December of 1911. In 1921, though, she was able to retire the original tiara that she had intended for her set in favor of a more spectacular piece of jewelry known as the Grand Duchess Vladimir tiara. And then this is where Queen Mary's path intersected with that of another royal jewelry lover from a very different walk of life. Grand Duchess Vladimir was an impoverished Russian noblewoman. She had been born Princess Marie of Mecklenburg in Germany. In 1874, she'd married Grand Duke Vladimir, a younger son of Tsar Alexander II. And because she married Vladimir, she was known as Grand Duchess Vladimir, in the same way as a modern married woman might be formally addressed as Mrs. John Smith. The Grand Duke and Grand Duchess Vladimir were wealthy, like all the Romanovs, but they set out to be the most spectacular members of their family. They built the last of the imperial palaces along the embankment of the Neva River in St. Petersburg, not too many doors down from the fabulous Winter Palace, and they filled their new building with luxurious furniture and priceless objects of art. And the Grand Duchess Vladimir set out to be the grandest of the Grand Duchesses, the Queen of St. Petersburg Imperial Society, often scheduling her parties and other events to conflict with events scheduled at the Winter Palace. That her sister-in-law, the Dowager Empress, and her niece, the Tsaritsa Alexandra, begged to differ on who was the leader of Imperial Society, mattered with Grand Duchess Vladimir not at all. She was a very strong-minded, flamboyant person, and she was going to outshine everyone. She used her jewelry as part of her program of social conquest. In 1880, she had a Russian jeweler make a beautiful tiara. It's 15 interlocking circles of diamonds, from each of which is suspended a large Baroque pearl drop. She wore her tiara and was photographed in it several times, and since it was custom among royalty of the time to exchange photographs, no doubt at some point Queen Mary saw this beautiful tiara and took note of it for later reference. Grand Duchess Vladimir continued her reign in Russian society up until 1917, when the Bolshevik Revolution broke out. She was forced to flee St. Petersburg and was unable to take any of her jewelry with her. Her jewelry was kept in a basement vault in the basement of her palace in St. Petersburg. Grand Duchess Vladimir lingered in the Crimea for 2 years before in 1919 the Crimea eventually fell to the Bolshevik forces and she was forced to flee, first to Italy and later to Switzerland. As she fled, she was able to convince a young British diplomatic attaché, Albert Stopford, to return to St. Petersburg and attempt to retrieve some or all of the jewelry. Stopford traveled to St. Petersburg to the Vladimir Palace and found that it had been badly ransacked during the revolution. However, with the aid of an old servant of the family, he was able to make his way to the basement vault and found out that the jewels inside had been untouched. Wrapping all of the jewels in old pieces of newspaper, he stuffed them down into ratty-looking old suitcases, dressed himself as an old woman, and took complete with an old-fashioned looking prairie sunbonnet. He was able to stuff the tiara into the brim of the sunbonnet and hide the pearls by pushing them down into the holly berries that decorated the old sunbonnet. Thus dressed in drag and carrying a British diplomatic clearance, Stopford made his way out of Russia and returned the jewels to the ailing Grand Duchess Vladimir and in Switzerland. Grand Duchess Vladimir died of heart failure in 1920, and in 1921 much of her estate of jewelry had to be sold. Queen Mary bought several pieces. Chief among them was the famous Vladimir tiara. Queen Mary decided to modify the tiara so that it could fit either the original pearl drops or the last 15 of the loose Cambridge emeralds from her grandmother's collection. Thus, the tiara can be worn with either emerald drops or pearl drops. Queen Mary designated this beautiful set of jewelry with the new tiara as royal crown property, which would be passed down to queens of Great Britain in future from Queen Elizabeth onward. Queen Elizabeth inherited the tiara and the rest of the jewelry in 1956 on her grandmother's death. Queen Elizabeth often wears the Vladimir tiara, and although she has worn it with the emeralds, she prefers the pearls. She is shown with the pearl drops inserted in the Vladimir tiara in her 1977 official Jubilee portrait, and it is the pearl-dropped Vladimir tiara that she wore in March of 2011 when she welcomed President and Mrs. Obama to a state visit at Buckingham Palace. The choker part of the necklace, or the choker necklace, that was part of the original emerald set, Queen Elizabeth gave to Princess Diana in 1981 as part of a wedding gift. Princess Diana had the choker backed with Velcro so that it would be easier to take on and off and more comfortable to wear. In 1984, when she attended a formal banquet on a state visit to Australia, she wrapped the choker around her head as a headband rather than wearing a tiara for the evening. Queen Elizabeth herself has worn the much larger collar necklace, both with the Cullinan 6 pendant and without, and she does from time to time wear some of the brooches that are made up of parts of the stomacher. The tiara the original tiara, the lacy tiara that Queen Mary had originally designed for the Durbar presentation, was in retirement for many decades until it was eventually given to Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall, who wore it as her first tiara after she married the Prince of Wales. It is one of two tiaras frequently worn by Camilla in her state engagements as Duchess of Cornwall. Whether Kate, who is the present Duchess of Cambridge, will dip into this marvelous set of jewelry in her own time has yet to be seen. Hopefully she will. Meanwhile, it will remain and is often displayed in royal exhibitions at Buckingham Palace when the palace is open to the public, and it will remain as a testament to these two magnificent women who loved royal jewelry. That's it.